Hi, welcome to Spotlight. My name is Lindy Beatie, and I'm here today with one of the most interesting people that I've talked to in a long time. His name is Homer Wills, and he has lived here. You are not going to believe that a wonderful, talented person like this has lived in this county, and you probably didn't even know it. So, welcome, Homer.
Oh, glad to be here.
Yay, I'm so excited. I loved our little conversation the other day, I really did. And I don't even know where to start, but I do. But it was so much. My head was reeling. My husband kept going, "You had such a great conversation on your end." So he said, I can't imagine what it must have been on the other end. So let's start with, how long have you lived here?
Well, the story starts here for me in 1970. Mm-hmm. And I escaped LA. I gave up being a professional musician and built a house truck and moved up here out behind Ananda, out on a logging road out there.
That's beautiful out there.
And built a house for a buddy of mine. Yeah. And stayed around for a year, mainly out on the ridge. And I still have friends from those days, 50 years ago. There's still, some of the old hippies are still here. But
I love it.
I always say we were the first wave.
Absolutely.
1969 and 70.
Now,
but
I was just going to say,
yeah,
currently.
When I retired, I came back, and I retired in 2009.
Okay.
So I've been here 14 years now.
Good.
Actually living here.
Now, what you told me is that your love of music started at a very young age. Can you tell us a little bit about what you are doing now and how that started? Yeah,
most people know me, all they know about me basically is that I play harmonica. Mm-hmm. And I've played harmonica with some of the greats. I've been fortunate, been lucky to play be asked to play, actually, by some Hall of Fame, a lot of Hall of Fame people. And
such as?
Well, name dropping.
That's okay. Let's name drop. Name drop.
I mean, to start, the one most people it gets their attention is I played a bunch of shows with Willie Nelson back in the 70s. I played bars with Willie, and then he got me to play some big concerts with him and took me out. We traveled, and so I did that, and that was 1974. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But before that, I had already been playing in New York City. I played with Richie Havens in 1964 when he was playing the what they call basket houses, where you pass a basket to, and just a lot of. I was into that New York City, the Village scene. When I was 17, the day I got graduated from high school, I hitchhiked to New York City. I knew what I wanted to do, and I spent the summer there.
And how did you get that feel? How did you know that you were going to do that?
My dad played music, and I just always loved music. And it's funny you're talking about leaving kids alone. But when I was young, I grew up in Memphis. And my dad raced stock cars, so he was in that party crowd, the music. So he knew all those guys. He was really good friends with Carl Perkins and the DJs, because they all hung out together and went to the races and went to the same clubs to dance or whatever. And I had two sisters, and in the 50s, I remember staying in the car while they went into the American Legion Hall, and I sat there in the car and listened to Carl Perkins playing.
Amazing.
while they were drinking and dancing, you know. But that's me and my little sisters. They were asleep in the back seat, but I was up there listening. So I was kind of raised on it.
Yeah.
And I got my first guitar when I was 9.
Oh, I love it.
And
so you were pretty independent as a child. Do you feel like that?
well, yeah. I mean, I'm always different. I never really fit into a lot of places when I was young, and had to go search those out, like Nevada.
There you go.
I can fit in here.
Yeah, that's great. So at 17, you graduated from high school and you hitchhiked to New York.
Yeah, and then I played up there in the village, and actually I lived, slept in the park, and or the coffee houses. They would let me sleep there, but they would lock me in so nothing got stolen or anything. But I would be locked in, and I'd wake up in the morning, make coffee, and wait for them to show up, you know. But yeah, and then so I played then for a couple of more years. I had my first band was in New Orleans. We had a jug band.
And so then how did you get from New York to New Orleans?
I hitchhiked.
Did you? And did you have a friend in New Orleans that kind of said, hey?
I had one buddy that said, we went there for Mardi Gras in '65.
Got it.
And then I met these guys that had a jug band, and we played on the streets and made a living, actually made a good living for you know, young teenagers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And lots of high school girls. And yeah, it was, no, I was sold on it, really, you know. And so I did that and had a rock and roll band. And then things were getting really good in '65. By the end of '65, I was back in New York, getting ready to go to London because I had a friend in London that said, if you get here, I can hook you up with bands. You can be playing the first night, which you can probably imagine in 1965, '66. If I had been over there, I would have been in a band.
You would have been.
But I got a draft notice.
Okay.
So
yes, that was that era.
Yeah. So that was in February of '66, and I ended up. My dad was in the military, so I had been raised around it, and I knew I didn't want to be drafted and just be a cannon fodder, you know. So I joined and became a lieutenant.
Fabulous. Well, that was probably the wiser choice, yeah.
Yeah, so I I had a year of training, a year in Asia, and then a year back here in Georgia.
Oh, great.
While I was in Georgia, I still kept playing harmonica.
Yeah.
Like I said, I played the whorehouses in Southeast Asia because that's where that's where the bands were.
Yeah,
you know.
they were, I bet.
But I got back and I played around Georgia, and I used to go to Miami at least once a month and played down there. And I played with people like Dion and Joni Mitch. I didn't play with Joni, but I knew Joni. She had just gotten into town. She was 20.
Wow.
And then while I was then I went in the Army. I mean, we're at the point where I'm still in the Army, but I'm playing. Then I got out of the Army, and I had an offer to do a job in L.A., do an album. So I went to L.A. and did the album and it was with other guys were the Wrecking Crew, which are the famous studio musicians. And they really liked me, and there wasn't really an L.A. There was a couple of guys that played harp, but they also played other instruments.
Okay.
So the guys in the Wrecking Crew got me some session work, and I did that for a while. But I realized that I just did not like the music business. the people I had to deal with back then were, you know, the guys with medallions and scarves and white belts, you know, and they ruled. I mean, I had to, in order to get work, you kind of had to kiss up to them. And I finally decided by the end of that year that I didn't want to be a professional musician, which I'd always wanted to be.
Well, and you know, when you talk about that you started so young, I mean, that seems like something that would have, you know, going to LA, kind of working your way, you know, down, going to Vietnam, coming back, going to LA. For a young person, yes. I mean, that would be, oh my gosh, that's your dream.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating that you really said, no, thank you.
Yeah, it seemed like I was set up. And if I'd had the patience or a different personality, I could have taken it. But I just couldn't stand LA, the town itself.
How old were you then? Can I ask?
I just got out of the Army. I was 21.
21.
Yeah. I was a 20-year-old lieutenant. My ration cards were stamped minor.
Oh my God.
I couldn't vote or buy whiskey, but I had a platoon of 28 men.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I was still young. I was 21, and then that's when I built my house truck, and drove it up here, and well, I ended up living on the coast and in LA, from Big Sur to Bo Lehman. We'd just park anywhere, on any beach back then you could park, and they never bothered you.
You could, yep.
And
and
then I ended up here, and the truck never left here. In fact, it was here usable up until a year or so ago, and it burned in one of the fires out on the ridge. But my friends had kept it up.
So, how did you know how to do a truck?
Well,
how did you know how to do that?
I had learned carpentry. My dad had taught me carpentry, but then when I went in the Army, I was in the Army Engineers.
Got it. Okay.
So I had 6 months of engineering. I mean, a serious education that taught me everything about construction.
Wow.
So, I mean, everything.
And so you just got a truck, and did somebody say, hey, I can help you do it, or did you just do it?
I already knew I could do it. I got the tools to do it, and then I came up, that's became my occupation. I decided I was going to be a carpenter, not a musician.
Oh.
And I had a 40-year career building serious stuff for 40 years.
Well, tell us what?
Huh?
Tell us what?
Oh, well, I mean, I built my first house here out by Ananda.
Yeah.
It was a 2-story octagon.
Oh, I love it.
And then I went back.
So that was in the 70s?
That was 1970.
Got it, okay.
And then in 71, I went to Tennessee and did construction there.
So homes and those types of things,
just homes. I built it.
So that was also kind of the part, did you enjoy that?
Well, it was something that I always enjoyed construction. It was good work. You know, it's healthy and fun, and when you're done, you've got something. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And also working with guys, because I'd learned to be a manager in the Army,
Sure.
so it was really easy for me to all my crews have always loved me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a good guy to work for.
Yeah, good.
So I did that. I did construction there, and for a couple of years there, and then I ran into an old buddy of mine from New Orleans. I had been flown up to New York City to do a recording session. Like I said, I still kept playing all this time.
That's great.
But never for money. I never took a penny for money, for playing.
So no money, then no contract, no
money.
nothing?
No, man, I was making great money doing construction. I'm sorry, I don't want your $20, you know. I just made $150 today.
Yeah,
you know, so.
yeah, I hear you.
So it made it easy for me. And back to that point, which as far as my music goes, I've recorded, I've toured. I've done a lot, but never for money. And it would, I figured it out young. Like I said, even before LA, I realized that I had a gig in New Orleans, a house band. Which was great. We were all 18 years old, and we got a great rock and roll band in the French Quarter, and a month-long job. So I got an apartment and everything, and I found myself after a few weeks going, "Oops, time to go to work." And I caught myself. I mean, man, I don't like that idea of work. Time to go play is a different thing.
So that was your kind of your soul, your creative part, whatever. The construction was how you made money.
Yeah.
Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah. So I ran into Jerry Jeff, who had already started to get famous. He wrote Mr. Bojangles in the 60s. And I ran into him, and he had moved to Austin. And when he found out I was doing carpentry, he goes, "Why don't you come down? You can stay in my house and remodel it." I just bought a house, and I hate it. It needs to be remodeled. Come and live with me, and I did that. So that's how I ended up in Austin in '73. And I was in Austin for the next 15 years.
Wow. Wow.
And playing.
I was just to say, were you still playing?
Yeah, at that point, Austin was just happening, just starting to get a music scene.
Yeah, in the early
so
70s,
I was in there, and like I said, I met Willie. Willie wanted me to play with him, and I played with a bunch of the better-known Austin songwriters: Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt, Steve Frumholtz.
So explain for our audience, and mostly for me, how is it that a young person in the harmonica that plays a harmonica, which is very unique. I mean, I'm sure there weren't a lot of harmonica players.
That was part of the luck of the draw.
How is it that the allure of the music industry was not for you? I mean, because here you tell me you didn't take any money for it, really.
I always wanted to play music for fun. I love to play music. It feels so good to me to make these noises, but it even feels better to see how many people enjoy it. And come up and tell me how much. I mean, it's just it really makes people happy. So that's always been why I did it. It's still to this day. Even I play with Juliet's about the only person I play with now after the pandemic. I don't, but we still play. In fact, this month is our 10th anniversary.
Oh my gosh! Congratulations!
Of playing together, and we've done festivals and theaters and a lot of bars and restaurants.
Because you don't hear a lot about 17-year-olds who go to New York or go to LA or whatever that are playing that don't get, for lack of a better word, sucked into that industry.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's so alluring, really.
What happens is either you just flunk at it.
Okay. But you didn't.
No,
you didn't flunk at it.
I was good. And or you end up making what happened to a bunch of the people that I knew before LA, when I was 17, 18 years old. I mean, I shared an apartment with Cass Elliot, and John Sebastian was like my big brother. And so I knew the what ended up being, the late 60s in crowd in LA. But by then, I never really got to see them because they were all up in Laurel Canyon, millionaires snorting coke and just not paying attention to little guys like me. I mean, I could have.
Because you could have.
I could have gone up there. Cass and I were like, she was like a big sister to me, you know. And I could have gone up to Cass and I would have been right in right away.
Yeah.
But I did not want to get into that. I was never into cocaine, really. So.
And what was your, what do you think, looking back now on all those years, what do you think really kept you from getting sucked into that lifestyle?
Just me,
Yeah.
just my personality. Yeah, I actually, I became a Buddhist when I was in high school. I studied, and my dad was an atheist until I taught him the word agnostic. You know,
Okay.
but he was anti-religion.
Yeah.
And he took me to we still went to church. Went to my mom's church, and then after that we'd go down to the Unitarian church.
Yes.
This is when I was in high school. So I started really reading and studying a lot of other philosophies and religions, and Buddhism just hit me to the core, like it was, this is it.
Yeah.
So basically I've been for 60 years I've been a Buddhist, which part of that back then when I was in high school that I liked was that the root of all suffering is desire, you know.
Yeah.
And if you control your desires or eliminate your desires, you eliminate the suffering. So I've made it a point to just never have desires, or keep them at a minimum. I mean, I had girlfriends.
Well, sure.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that one.
You know, but material stuff.
Yeah.
From never ever. That's why it was so easy for me hitchhiking around, living in the park. It didn't matter. I was just as happy as a clam, as John Prine would say. Yeah.
Well, but because a lot of times when I listened to your story the other day, you think there is so much that young people can get sucked into, you know, and you didn't. What other types of things, when you talk to people, when people ask you, young people ask you about your music, your talent for that, and they want to be stars and they want to go be, you know, musicians and they want to sign a contract. What are some of the things that you've said or you might say to them?
You know, the young people that I know have a pretty good grip on what fame means. And I mean, it's mainly because of growing up when the famous people were not necessarily something to look up to.
Yeah.
You know, so most of the young people I know now are more like me. They really love playing the music, and they would love to make money. But right now, making money in the music business is really, really hard. Yeah. I got friends that have gold records that are playing house concerts.
Oh, wow.
You know, just because of that, there's no album sales. Songwriters don't get the royalties. You know, and so it's
really different.
It's really different, and I don't even know where the future's headed with that.
Yeah.
But I know a bunch of the younger musicians here in Nevada County, and they all have a really good head on it, where they love to play. They're realistic about their chances of ever getting big, and they'll still pursue. They'll still recording albums and doing what they can, you know. And who knows? Some of them may make it.
Absolutely.
But they're not totally driven, you know. Like most of them already have kids, and they have to have a day job because you can't make a living playing music here or many places actually.
It's interesting that you talk about the transition from what it was in the 70s to, you know, 60s and 70s to now, because it is so different. in the music industry and making money in the music industry.
Yeah.
I mean,
The money's just not there anymore. It really isn't, unless you're, unless you're one of the
you've already kind of made it, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. If you get America's Got Talent or whatever, then you can suddenly be overnight famous. But overnight famous doesn't really happen much anymore.
No, not like it used to.
And the ones that I've known, most of them didn't handle it very well. I mean, I moved back to I left Austin in the 80s, and I moved, and because Austin was really getting crowded, and most of my buddies were doing really well, but they were out on tour. And since I didn't tour, I didn't get to play much. They didn't play in town. So it was getting crowded and expensive, and I left Austin and moved to Miami and did carpentry. Only I had connections through my sister, who was in the film business, to where I started building scenery. And I was really, really successful at that.
And what did you like about that?
Well, I liked the money. the film business, there is money in it, and
still, yeah.
I'm sure,
yeah, still.
But I also love the creativity and building scenery and props. There's no guidelines. You have to think. Every job is different, and you have to really be inventive and skillful.
Yeah, exactly. Was there ever a time when you started building something and then somebody said to you, "Oh no, that's the wrong direction"?
Oh, not that. There's been times when it depends on the directors who, if they didn't explain it well to me, it didn't get built.
Right.
And they were disappointed because they didn't explain it good enough.
Yeah, and they took that on as their issue.
But it's okay. I mean, I got paid so much for building it that I didn't mind redoing it even. I built cabinets and furniture all through the 70s and 80s, and got really paid well. But I would get more for building a fake kitchen cabinets that there was not one hinge and nothing worked. I would hot melt the knobs on the doors. And I got paid for building that kitchen that was used in a soap commercial more than I did for a real one, where a year later they'd call me back because the door was sticking.
Oh my gosh!
So that the money is great in the
film
business.
Was it competitive at that time?
Well, there was only a few people. But there's only a few people in South Florida that did it. That had shops.
Got it. Okay.
And I had a big shop. We did. If you watch TV in the 90s, you saw my commercials.
Oh my gosh.
Like the Radio Shacks with Howie and Terry.
Oh my gosh.
I built all those.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful.
And a lot of commercials, a lot of videos for Jay-Z, Will Smith, Lil' Kim. Just a lot of music videos.
I was just going to say, so you kind of had that era of MTV then too.
Yeah.
Where they transitioned into doing videos for MTV.
Yeah. So there was money in that.
Yeah, I bet.
Not as good as regular commercials, or and I did feature movies. I mean, I did one with Steve McQueen. I did a couple with Matthew Modine and. But then I got into Univision. Was based in Miami, and that's where they did all their main studios. So I got into with them, and I had to bid every job, but I could always outbid
Right.
the other shops. And
great.
so I built, for about 5 years, I built most of the sets for Univision, which were
Really?
game shows. I mean, really silly game shows, and
Soap operas probably too.
well,
yeah?
we did.
Soap
I did
operas?
a whole big set for a soap opera that was all built in one studio, and it was a living room and a bedroom and a kitchen,
yeah.
and they could shoot it from different angles.
Wow.
I did all that,
Cool.
you know, and then their big events, like their big Southern Latin Grammy
Right.
Awards, I built the scenery for that.
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh.
Major. The sets that I built have been seen by millions of
Oh my
people.
gosh.
You know,
Oh my gosh.
more than any harmonica playing I ever did. That's for sure.
And so now here you are back in Nevada County. How did that happen?
Well, in the 2008, my business was dying. They were not shooting the big commercials anymore. They were moving more into graphics and into digital stuff. So there was less call for it. And what really got me was I used to build big entryways for the Fort Lauderdale yacht,
Oh, wow.
which is mega yachts.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And these mega yacht companies would hire me to build big entrance to their displays.
So I like
And
trade
in
shows and things like that,
2008, they all canceled.
Yeah, see. Ugh.
And they said, yeah, we're only bringing 2 boats this year. You know, and these are like 200-foot yachts
Yeah.
with helicopter pads, and these people were going broke.
Yeah. Well,
So
2008, yeah.
at that point I was 62 and getting kind of tired of it, and the money wasn't as good anymore. And my buddy that lived here, that I built the house for in
Yeah.
1970, he visited South Florida a lot, so we would hang out. His son lived down there. And in 2008, he said, why don't you come back to Nevada City? And I said, well, you know, I've always wanted to. I figured when I retire, that's what I'd do. He goes, well, let's do it now. I got a plan. And sure enough, he had a plan, and I came out here 14 years ago this month. In fact, my Facebook memories are me selling, watching eBay, watching I sold all my tools. I sold everything I owned, and got Social Security, and that's all I needed. I packed it in a truck and moved out here in 2009.
I love it. And still playing with harmonica.
Well, little did I know what a great music scene there was here in Nevada County.
You know, people don't know that. I had another discussion with another person on this show, and that's exactly what people do not know that.
It's really incredible. I mean, really great people, and some of them I've known since the 70s that are still here playing, and then other ones that have moved in through the years. You know, but it's just a great community to be in, whether it's the musicians or the artists or the whatever. Everybody is very creative and very, very nice people. I mean, there is real empathy and compassion, the 2 major things that make you a nice person.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's full of it here. I mean,
And you're still playing?
I still play. The pandemic shut it down.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so Juliet and I went. We had just started a new group with Bob Woods, and we played the Miners Foundry, and then in December, and then in February, we had a tour of the Bay. We had tours booked basically, California tours. And all of a sudden, everything got canceled. So for 2 years, we didn't play at all. and then it opened up. Well, in that 2 years, I live in an RV. And I, like I said, being a Buddhist, I cherish my solitude, you know, and so 2 years of not even getting out to play, you know, but man, I'm
How did you do that? How did you do that?
I'm locked into that RV. I don't open the door for days at a time, and I don't even talk, you know, I mean, sometimes I'll get a phone call, not often, and I'll answer it, and I'll go to say hello, and my voice I haven't used it in 2 days.
My goodness.
Hello, you know, but it's okay. I'm really fine with the way, because the first 10 years here was really great. Julia and I, we played hundreds of shows and
great.
Festivals and everything. So.
And so what's next on the
So
docket?
now, you know, now we're doing a few gigs a year. You know, we're playing. I'm going to back her up in May for the women's show at the Wild Eye Pub.
Oh, great!
And it's not a Homer and Juliet. It's Juliet with
Homer back there
accompanying her.
Okay.
And then we have a nice show up in Nevada and Sierra City at the Kentucky Mine Amphitheater. In August we're up there, and then whatever stuff comes up.
Yeah, it does.
But
So do you
we're
ever
not-
play with anybody that you like is passing through from your past?
I did that for a while, and I still do. Actually, last fall, my old friend from New Orleans, and Marcia Ball, came. She comes through about once a year, every other year, and I had the rock and roll band in New Orleans, and when I left to go to New York, they had to get a new singer, a new lead person, and Marcia was a teenager just starting out that was kind of just not ever doing gigs, but that was her first band. It was my band that I was in. So we've been friends since we were teenagers. So every time she comes through, she gets me to go and play with her. And you know, I've played with a few other people. The Texas guys, they don't come through that much anymore. But in the early teens, I had I built a venue called the Tin House that was out on McCourtney, right across from the entrance to the fairgrounds. It was an old shed, and that was my last carpentry job. Was I took this old shed with no interior or anything, and I built a really nice place inside this old tin building, wired it, plumbed it, everything, and started having concerts. And my buddies from Texas who would play North California, they would come out here and do 5 or 6 gigs at different places, but they always had days off.
Yeah.
So they would come up here and do a show here, you know. So I had some really well-known at the top of the Texas guys playing here, there out by the fairgrounds at my little venue.
Homer, you have had quite the life.
And
still going.
I'm still looking for the next adventure.
I love it.
I'm hoping it's a good one.
Yeah, I think so. Well, thank you so much for coming here and meeting with me and being featured on Spotlight. I really appreciate it because I had heard of you, but I had no idea of all your antics and your passion. I just think it's marvelous that you love your music and you're passionate about it, yet you're not wrapped up in that crazy world.
No, well, I'm really glad. And years ago, I became interested in Nevada City media, and my friend April had a show, and I knew that, and being in that business, the film and TV business, I loved the idea of getting young people started.
Good.
And I think that this is a wonderful thing that you guys are doing.
Isn't
And
it?
I've been asked to do a lot of interviews, and this is the first interview that I've done.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
I
you know,
appreciate
so,
that. And we're going to put out, say, yay, Ramona.
Yeah, for sure.
So, thank you so much. This has been, I just love listening to your talk.
Well, this is a short one. It's 30 minutes, and as you can tell, I can go for hours.
That's okay. That's okay.
The people, you know, one of my main things, since I don't work or play music much anymore, is I live on Facebook.
Oh, do you?
So if you're interested, look me up on Facebook. And I've got over 4,000 friends, so I don't really take friends anymore, but follow me.
Okay.
And you'll get my posts. And I post almost every day a story or something interesting.
Great.
That's why I have, you know, so many friends and followers and people that. So that'll be, you could continue the Homer saga if you want to on Facebook. It's there for the viewing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My friends, so much. I've just enjoyed this so much. And that's it. That's another wrap for Spotlight. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Lindy Beatie, and we'll see you next time.